rehabilitated, and real entertaining. This is the Carl Jackson Podcast.
Hey, welcome to the Carl Jackson Show podcast. This is going to be a fun podcast, actually a very informative podcast, I should say. I don't know how fun it will be, but Stephen Moore is always an exciting guest. But first, I want to ask you to please subscribe to the podcast at SalemPodcastNetwork.com, thecarljacksonshow.com, or any and everywhere that you find your podcast. Also, find me on social media, The Carl Jackson Show, wherever I am on social media. And please help out our sponsor, MyPillow, Mike Lindell, American Jobs, American Manufacturing, right now on sale, Percale sheets and Giza Dream sheets for only $29.98. All you have to do is go to mypillow.com, click on the radio listener square, type in the promo code Carl, that's with C-A-R-L is how it's spelled, or you can call 800-858-0263. Mike Lindell is a patriot. He's fighting for election integrity. You can help him out. You can help me out. Go to mypillow.com and fill those cool, crisp Percale sheets and Giza Dream sheets that I know you'll love. Now, I want to go right to my guest because we know that he is a busy man, always on demand. Stephen Moore, it is such a privilege and an honor to have you on my podcast. I've been looking forward to this interview. So good to have you.
Carl, great to be with you. Thanks so much. And right back to you. I love it when you're on the radio with Larry Elder and so on. So it's great to be with you on your podcast.
Thank you, sir. Very, very much so appreciate it. Listen, guys, I want to encourage you to buy Stephen Moore's books, read all of his material, his latest Govzilla, How the Relentless Growth of Government is Devouring Our Economy. Of course, you guys know about Trumponomics, Fueling Freedom. I want to get into some of the topics of that today because I think that's extremely important. But I think the first thing that I like to talk to you about, Steve, and I don't know if this is intentional or not. It is my opinion that it is. But all of this spending that is going on in Washington, D.C., this inflation is insane. And we still have a federal government that is hell-bent on spending, including the latest, the Inflation Reduction Act, quote unquote.
Well, look, we have a sickness in Washington, and it is the overspending virus. That's the new virus, right, is the massive amounts of money that has been spent and borrowed and printed. And so if you add it all up since Biden came into office, you're looking at right now roughly 4.2 trillion, not 4.2 billion, $4.2 trillion of money spent, borrowed.
Just since he's entered office.
Yes, in 20 months. 20 months. It's hard to believe that we could be so incredibly fiscally reckless. I mean, this is a train wreck. And, and by the way, that doesn't even include, Carl, the $500 billion he wants to give away for the student loan, quote, forgiveness.
I want to get into
and so it's so patently obvious to anyone with a sixth grade education that if you spend and borrow and print that much money, you're going to have inflation. I mean, it has to happen. Inflation is just putting more money into an economy with fewer goods, and that's exactly what we've done. So we saw inflation rush up to 10%, coming down a little bit now. That's the good news. But the reason the inflation rate is coming down now, Carl, is because the economy is really slowing down radically. We're seeing consumers really pulling back on their spending, not just in the United States, but around the world. I have to say, Carl, I'm very, 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 very nervous about where the U.S. economy is right now. I think we could be headed into a much more severe recession than we had in the first half of this year. You're seeing it in Europe. You're seeing it in a lot of parts. You look at manufacturing, down. Construction, down. Small business optimism, down. Housing, down. All of these indicators are suggesting we're in for a rough patch. And by the way, I hope I'm wrong about that. But I think that this full employment economy we've had for the last year and a half or so is coming to a screeching halt because we've made so many policy mistakes led by what you just said, the $4.2 trillion of spending that we're acting like every day is Christmas.
Unfortunately, Steve, I fear the same thing. First off, we have an administration that is completely lying about the fact that we are in a recession, albeit relatively minor at this point. But just like you said, like you've mentioned, the spending continues. I can't believe the number is $4.2 trillion already. I didn't realize that. I had remembered, but now that I think about it, I know that we had the American Rescue Plan.
That was 1.8
infrastructure
trillion plus 1.1 trillion for the so-called infrastructure bill, which is a green energy New Deal bill. Then we had so that's 3 trillion in his first year. Then we had a $300 billion so-called CHIPS bill, which was the bailout. Right. And by the way, many Republicans voted for that crappy bill. And then we had the, what did they call? The Inflation Reduction Act. They should be thrown in jail just for calling it that, because of course it has the opposite effect. That was $600 billion. And now you've got another $500 billion they want to do on top of that with the student loan debt bailout. And also I want to be very clear to people. That's on top of the normal $5 to $6 trillion we spend in the normal budget. So that's like the cherry on top of the sundae. And this thing is going to collapse if we continue to do this. We need to radically cut government spending right now. And Biden seems to be implementing something you and I have talked about over the last couple of years, which is this dingbat idea of modern monetary theory. Remember that one, right, Carl? That's this crazy idea that was drafted by some second-rate professors at some second-rate universities that basically says we could just spend and spend and spend as much as we want to, and there's no negative consequences of that. Well, that's like saying, Carl, I can just go out and spend whatever I want, run up my credit card, and everything's going to be fine. I mean, how stupid is that?
I know it's so baffling to me. I don't see how people can't. You have to be either as a federal government, you have to be completely incompetent, or you have to be intentionally bankrupting America. Yes. You talked about this on your PragerU video. I mean, that went viral. I was so glad that good Lord, I looked at it again this morning, Steve. That thing is at 7.8 million views. Woo. I don't know if you know that, but that's absolutely phenomenal numbers wise, obviously. But more importantly, I'm glad that people are hearing it and understand what's happening, because I really do believe that this is an intent. I believe this is intentional. I believe the left is attempting to bankrupt America. Again, they're either incompetent or they're doing this purposefully, and I don't understand it. Inflation, obviously, is a tax on the poor. Let's talk about real quick the idea of this student loan forgiveness. I want to get your take on this. And also, guys, make sure you subscribe to the Committee to Unleash Prosperity. Go to committee to unleash prosperity.com. You can get some quick hits every morning from Steve and his colleagues at Committee to Unleash Prosperity.com. Subscribe to that. Mm-hmm. But California is one of these places where, I mean, they are doing everything that's absolutely insane in communist. But I want to talk about the student loan forgiveness program. I want to get your take on that. And also, I want to get your take on this California ban on sales of new gas-powered cars beginning in 2035. You authored the book, Fueling Freedom, and I just want to get your take on that.
So I'm only laughing because I was in California last week, and so California, the first day I was there, Governor Gavin Newsom, who, by the way, he's considered the leading Democratic nominee.
Isn't that crazy?
How crazy is that? I mean, he's completely ruined the state of California, and the Democrats want to make him the president. Anyway, so he announces that after the year 2035, no one can buy a car. You have to buy an electric vehicle. So if you want to get an old-fashioned car that we've made for 100 years, you're not allowed to do that. They're banned from the state of California. Okay, so everybody's going to have to buy electric vehicles. Okay, you with me on that, Carl? Now, then 2 days later, they have a heat wave, and they don't have enough electric power, so they're telling people, you stop using electricity and don't power your car. I mean, and right now, only in California, like 7% of the cars on the road are electric vehicles. Can you imagine what it would be like if you had 100% that were electric vehicles? I mean, where are they going to get the power, right? So
It's so frustrating because obviously they're using California as the guinea pig, and they want to impose this stuff on the rest of us. Listen, and I have no problem, Steve, if people want electric vehicles, EVs. But first, I'm like, let's be honest about them. I'm sorry, just in the production phase, and if you're getting rid of the batteries, they don't do. They're not better for the environment. That's just a straight up lie when you do some basic research, but that's fine if you want to feel better about yourself and virtue signal. And I know from what I understand, they're very fast cars. Me personally, I'm old school. I love the internal combustion engine. I love stick shift still. I'm one of those type of people, but I'm just tired of the lies. And considering, just like you said, within a couple of days, I don't understand how people don't see right through this, Steve.
So, look, I don't have any problem with electric cars. I have a good friend who has a Tesla. I love driving it. It's an amazing vehicle. And for people who want to buy electric cars, have at it. I'm pro-choice, right? But what they're basically saying, I mean, people have to understand, they're telling you, it's like the old joke. If you remember when Henry Ford was first rolling off the Model Ts off the conveyor belts, and he was asked, about the car, and he said, you can get the Model T in any color you want as long as it's black. And, so they're now saying, oh, yeah, you can buy any car you want as long as it's an electric vehicle. And I got to tell you, the American people are not, some people want to buy electric vehicles. I don't want, I'm not going to buy an electric vehicle. I want an old fashioned, I don't want to be driving down Lake Michigan, Michigan Avenue in Chicago on a frigid, freezing day when it's 10 degrees below zero and run out of charge in my battery. And so there are a lot of reasons why people don't want electric cars. Why should the government tell you what kind of car you can buy? And 70% of Americans are against the idea that somehow the government's going to tell you what car you buy, rather than Americans have a love affair with their cars. We want to choose ourselves.
Right. I mean, isn't this about control ultimately?
Of course it is. It's about, look, I think that the most frightening thing to me that's happened in America over the last 5 to 10 years, and especially in the last couple of years, is that this climate change fanaticism of the left, that they want to control every aspect of your life, Carl. They want to tell you what kind of light bulb you can put in your lamp. They want to tell you, have you heard about the smart thermostats, Carl? Do you know? Yes,
I heard about that the other day. Yeah.
So this is Orwellian. I'm not making this stuff up, folks. This is basically in Colorado. They basically, because they had a heat wave too, the government is setting the thermostat in your house. Come on.
That is insane.
Yeah. And that's, they have to do that because it's for the public good. And so I am worried about this, because the idea that somehow we're going to change the temperature of the planet by cutting off people's electric power is insane. By the way, it doesn't matter what we do, because China's pollution levels are 5 times higher than we are. They're building, did you know this, Carl, that China right now is building 50 massive, the biggest coal plants in the history of the world? Do you think President Xi cares about climate change?
No, absolutely not. And we saw what happened with Russia as well.
Exactly.
Russia's figured out a way to make money selling their fossil fuels. And while we sit here and suffer, it's a complete and utter joke what we see happening with
Carl, they're laughing behind our backs, as Trump used to say. I mean, what we're doing right now is so dangerous, because we have more coal, more oil, more gas than any other country in the world. We're so endowed by our Creator with amazing resources in this country. And yet we've ceded control of the coal industry to China. In 5 years, China's going to be producing 5 times as much coal as we are. We've ceded control of the oil markets to the OPEC countries like Iran. And we're ceding the control over the natural gas markets to Russia. Now think about that. Russia, Iran, China, they're our 3 greatest enemies. And we are playing right into their hands. So my point is, Carl, this isn't just an economic energy issue, which it is. It's also a national security issue. I mean, where do you think that Russia and China are reliable sources of energy for us? They hate us.
Right. This is unreal. Let me ask you this on a personal level, as far as people are concerned. Maybe people aren't familiar or don't understand what a huge impact fossil fuels plays in the honestly in making American prosperous. Can you break that down for us so the people that may not understand why it is so crucial for us to continue to go after coal and natural gas and nuclear energy, for God's
Oh
sakes,
yeah.
We could use in abundance, and it's absolutely clean.
Yeah, let me just say something about nuclear power. Let's assume for a minute, and I reject this idea, but let's say that the climate change fanatics are correct and that the world is going to blow up in a heat, bomb if we don't do something about reducing fossil fuels. So let's say God decreed you have to stop using fossil fuels. Then what would we do to keep our economy prosperous? Would we build windmills all over the place? No. The solution is so obvious. If we can't use fossil fuels, we would just build 100 nuclear power plants and we'd be done. And nuclear power and by the way, nuclear power doesn't emit any sources of pollution. Now, there are issues with the nuclear waste and we could deal with that. But my point is, why is the left always chooses the most imbecilic option? Why would they choose the energy source that is the least reliable, the most expensive? Basically, they're taking us back to the pre-industrial age because, people used windmills back in the 1600s. That's how they got energy. And then my point, again, the Industrial Revolution, which is what caused the massive increases in living standards throughout the world, wasn't just a revolution of industry. It was an energy revolution where we started to realize, hey, we can use steam, we can use coal, we can use oil and gas to mass produce goods and services. The left wants to move us back to pre-industrial age energy.
It's so regressive. And by the way, guys, I'm speaking to Stephen Moore, economist Stephen Moore. I'm from Freedom Works. The Heritage Foundation. Make sure you subscribe to the Committee to Unleash Prosperity. You can get information on the economy in your inbox. You can defeat liberals every day concerning the economy. If you want arguments to fight the left. And honestly, we have to do this, guys. We have to be informed. We have to not only be informed and make logical arguments, but we have to be able to make those even emotional arguments to draw people in and help people to realize what the left is doing to destroy this nation. And I got to say, I appreciate your work, Steve, because I think you're doing a Herculean, or putting forth a Herculean effort on this front to make sure that we do that. Let me just get your take on a couple of more things real quick. Student loan forgiveness. I want to get your take on that. I don't think we've discussed that yet. Also, the FAST Act in California, going back to California, $22 minimum wage for, oh my God, I cannot believe this. $22 minimum wage for fast food joints, Steve.
Yeah. So first of all, the student loan debt issue is just, I think not only are people against this, Carl, but I've really, I do a radio show on WABC radio in New York on the weekends, and I really enjoy doing it because I take calls from people as you do. And people aren't just opposed to the student loan bailout, they're angry about it. And they should be. It's so patently unfair that people who've paid back their loans should now have to pay more taxes for people who've acted irresponsibly and won't pay back their loans. In fact, a lot of the people who have these unpaid student loans, they make over $100,000 a year, and they're not paying their loans back. Now, I'll make a second quick point about this. This will be the death of the student loan program. I said this on Fox News the other day. If you do this, Joe Biden, the student loan program is dead.
Right.
It's dead.
Right.
Because,
good point.
Carl,
No,
who in the
good point.
future would ever repay a student loan? Nobody would. Nobody would. Hey, Joe Biden, you're killing the student loan program by giving student loan forgiveness to people who don't deserve it. And so it's highly regressive. And then you've got the people like the electricians and the truck drivers and the waitresses and the nurses who maybe didn't go to college who have to pay for the people who did. You use the word regressive. This is one of the most regressive policies I've ever heard. So I don't think it's going to happen. I think that the public is so against this that I just, and by the way, the president doesn't have the authority to do it either. I've got about one more minute left.
So just
Carl,
real quick, talk to us,
mortgages,
rents, the housing market. Talk to us about that and tell us real quickly what people can do to better themselves or brace themselves for this. I think we're headed towards a deeper recession, Steve.
So the housing market is very worrisome to me right now. And why is that? Because mortgage rates are rising. They've risen from 3% under Trump to almost 6% under Biden. And when those mortgage rates go up, so let's say you want to buy a $400,000, $500,000 house, which is about the median in America, the extra mortgage payments you're going to make because of the higher interest rates raises the price of that house over 30 years by $150,000 to $200,000. So it's making housing more unaffordable for people. You're seeing a slowdown in housing construction. You're seeing a reduction in home prices. You're seeing more and more people starting to default on their mortgages. So I'm very worried about this because we saw what happened. Remember, I almost don't want to bring it up. What happened in 2007 and 2008 when we built the housing bubble. And I am worried because housing is such a driver of our economy right now. The last thing I'll say, we have something called the Prosperity Hotline that we put out every morning. Sure. And I think that you get that, Carl. And this is free. I'm not selling anybody anything. I just want people to get it. You can read it in 5 minutes every morning. Newt Gingrich told me the other day that it's the first thing he reads every morning. And all you have to do is just go to the Committee to Unleash Prosperity website. That's Committee to Unleash Prosperity, and give us your email and we'll send it to you. I'm not selling you anything, folks. It's absolutely free. If you like it, you'll continue to get it 5 mornings a week. If you don't, you just unsubscribe to it. But we cover the economy, we cover politics, we cover, COVID. Next time we could talk a whole show about the crazy policies that government put in place on COVID. But if you want to be the smartest guy in the room, get that. And Carl, you are a superstar, and I really enjoy being with you. Thank you so much for allowing me to come on your podcast.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate it. Stephen Moore, economist Stephen Moore. Go out, check him out. Again, the Committee to Unleash Prosperity.com. Go out and check out his books. God bless you, Stephen Moore. Look forward to having you back. Hey guys, I appreciate you tuning in to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Stephen Moore had to go early. He's a busy man in high demand. He had to go do a Fox hit right after our podcast, but we look forward to having him back. We still had plenty of questions to get to. But again, he's a busy man. But you can find out or read more about Stephen Moore. Get his latest book, Govzilla: How the Relentless Growth of Government is Devouring Our Economy. If you want to understand how fossil fuels impact our economy and American prosperity, make sure you get his book, Fueling Freedom. A wonderful book to have just as a reference book to have on your bookshelf. And again, you can go to the Committee to Unleash Prosperity.com, Committee to Unleash Prosperity.com. But I do feel like we have to be able to make arguments against the left's policies because the left, here's what the left does ultimately. They put people in place, they plop robots in place that are simply going to be a rubber stamp for the far left, for the George Soros wing of the party and the World Economic Forum wing of the party, the AOCs of the world. That's essentially what the left does. It doesn't matter. Joe Biden is just a face. John Fetterman, this guy that's running for the U.S. Senate in Pennsylvania, the guy can barely speak. The guy can barely because he's had a stroke. And I mean the guy no ill, but there's no way that guy should be anywhere close to the U.S. Senate, putting on this fake front while he's throwing on a hoodie, trying to act like he's down with the people. And the guy has never been down with the people. He's lived a privileged life. I don't necessarily have a problem with people that have lived a privileged life unless you're lying about it and trying to pretend as if you haven't because you're running for the U.S. Senate, when all you will not be a unique voice. You will simply be a rubber stamp. John Fetterman will be a rubber stamp for the radical left, not for the Democrat Party, for the radical left-wing Marxist branch of the Democrat government. You have to understand that these people are just faces. They just plop them in. There is no unique thought. They are robots. They are not going to be representatives for the people. So it's so important that we inform ourselves on these issues and we learn how to make arguments to take on the left's policies, regardless of who's in power. And I do this too. I'll talk about Biden oftentimes because he's such an easy target, but understand that Biden forgets what he says, within 5 minutes probably. And so there are a lot of people pulling the strings behind the scenes. And they're just leftists. And I don't think Biden would disagree with the policies. I think the guy is a jerk. I think the guy is corrupt. I think his voting record proves that he was never Lunchbox Joe. He was always far left. when it came to public policy. He's never been a moderate. I don't even know how conservatives mistook him for a moderate. The guy is a nasty, mean-spirited, corrupt, now senile person. And what the left is trying to do is, I want you to understand, I want to say this before I close out. The left, let's put it this way. The Democrat Party is successful, and I've said this time and time again on air. The Democrat Party is successful when you are unsuccessful. Marxism is as Marxism does. That's what they want to do. The Democrat Party wants you in some way, shape, or form to rely on the government. They want to take money from you, and they want to live fat on the hog. They want to hook up their homies. The rich people are going to be insulated from this, but middle-class America is going to suffer greatly. Poor Americans are going to suffer greatly under the policies, the economic policies in particular of the Democrat Party. Inflation Reduction Act, give me a freaking break. How do you put more money on a credit card and pretend like it's going to help the people when it's the people that have to pay the credit card debt, and now with even more interest? And then hopefully this doesn't come to fruition, but we're going to pay off loans for college students, people that are going to make more money than the vast majority of the middle class, or they're going to be in the upper tier of the middle class. And people that decided not to go to school, they couldn't afford to go to college, are going to pay for them. What sense does that make? Except to gain more control. They know these lefties that went to college oftentimes, or these people that went to college, a vast majority of them have become brainwashed in the college system. So this might destroy the student loan program. You know what? Good. Maybe we need if there's going to be a student loan program, it needs to be altogether different. The federal government doesn't need to be running it. It used to be flipped, where 80% of the loans came from the private, from the real world. I hate saying private sector, but from the real world lenders, as opposed to these government establishment people in Washington, D.C., where 20% of lending came from there. It needs to be flipped again. So maybe this is an absolute good idea that happens. But again, I just wanted to touch on Stephen Moore because we are headed, guys. I don't care what the left says. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm speaking reality. We cannot continue to spend in the way that we've spent money, $4.2 trillion, as Stephen Moore informed us of, and not expect to go into financial bankruptcy as a country, and you not expect to fill it. Continue to do it. So that means more and more Americans are going to be squeezed. More and more Americans are going to be able to afford less. More and more Americans are going to be, they're going to have to just thrive on basic necessities. There will be no luxuries. You won't be able to afford luxuries. You're going to have to learn how to, play in your backyard, invite your family over to do that. That's as good as life is going to get under the left. This is what they want. This is what they want. You heard Stephen Moore talk about this, controlling your thermostat in Colorado. People, I overheard a couple of stories where people literally went to turn up their thermostat or turn it down rather, and they couldn't. The government was literally in control of their thermostat, yet they pay the bill, they pay the mortgage, or they rent the house, and they couldn't control their own thermostat. Do you think the DC elites or even the elites in your state capitals are doing that? Do you think they're worried about the temperature in their home? No, they're turning it to whatever the hell they want. It's insane where we're at. Just understand this. Democrats are successful when you're unsuccessful. Guys, listen, I appreciate you tuning in to this podcast today. It's always a pleasure to come on and speak with you and to fight together for this great nation. Please be sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever podcasts are found. That includes Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube. Check us out on our YouTube channel, The Carl Jackson Show. Rumble. We would really love to build up on Rumble. That's an alternative media source. And listen, there's no doubt about it. As we speak truth to power, something the left used to pretend to do. But as we really speak truth to power, those of us in the conservative movement, those of us in the MAGA movement, I would dare to say, we're going to be silenced. It's already happened. Guys, I've been, good Lord, Gabe's knows. I literally, when I was sitting in for Larry Elder, I had over a couple of 100,000 of you like my Facebook page. Maybe I've seen a few of you, a few dozen. This is what the left is doing. So I'm asking you to join me on these alternative sites. Make sure you find me on Truth Social. Make sure you find me on Getter. Please. So that's subscribing to the podcast. And again, also, wherever I am on social media, The Carl Jackson Show. That is The Carl Jackson Show. Getter, Twitter, wherever I am, please find me there. We'll fight this fight together because we have to continue to fight against the left. We really do. I didn't get to COVID. I wanted to talk about COVID lockdowns and how that impacted the economy. I wanted to talk about school kids being out of school, literally being 3 years behind, at least in many cases, and how that's going to impact the economy going forward, because you're going to have a bunch of dumb people that are more worried about getting or having a chop a dick off of me instead of getting a good education and learning how to read, write, and do arithmetic. All of this is going to impact us, right? All of it is going to impact us. Also, please be sure to make sure you help out my sponsor, Mike Lindell, mypillow.com. That is mypillow.com. And you can click on the radio listener square to take advantage of the new deal. Just type in the promo code Carl, C-A-R-L. Get a deal $29.98 for Giza Dream Sheet sets for the Percale sheets. You're going to love them. You're going to sleep comfortably with them, or you can give them a call, 800-858-0263. And remember, you're helping out a patriot. You're buying good products that are going to make you feel comfortable, and you're helping American jobs and American manufacturing. MyPillow.com. Use the promo code Carl, and that promo code is good for whatever you search for on that website, or give them a call, 800-858-0263. They have a 10-year warranty on these products, guys, a 60-day money-back guarantee. You can't beat that with a bat. All right, until next time, guys, I really appreciate you tuning in, and do not grow weary doing good. We're going to win this thing. God bless you.